to wrap up the event with a panel discussion from some of our local industry experts. I would now like to welcome our 2018 South Central Kansas MLS presidents, Megan McCurdy-Needens. Megan will be moderating today's panel discussion.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If we would have our four panelists come join us. Today's panel consists of a realtor, a builder, a lender, and an appraiser. We are going to get their perspective on our local market and hear their impressions of the forecast as it relates to their specific areas. If you have any questions throughout the panel, if you want to write those down and pass them forward to Doug or Sheila, if time permits, we will allow for the audience questions at the end. Or Todd or Sheila, excuse me, Todd or Sheila. So again, panelists, I want to welcome our first panelist to the stage, who is our realtor representative, and that is Amelia Summerall. Amelia grew up in a very rural area in the mountains of North Carolina. She graduated from the University of North Carolina in 1986. Upon graduation, she got married and moved to Wichita. Her husband was stationed at McConnell Air Force Base. Her first job in Wichita was an assistant to another realtor. When the agent moved out of town, Amelia went out on her own. She has been a top agent team at Coldwell Banker Plaza for the past 20 years, and she is consistently in the top 3 agents in the city. Amelia and her husband Marty have a 19-year-old daughter who is a sophomore at the University of Arkansas and a 17-year-old son who is a junior in high school. Amelia is the current chairperson for the Professional Standards Committee at RSCK and a past member of the board of directors at RSCK. She is also on the board of trustees at Wichita Collegiate School. Amelia and her family are also very active in the Young Life program. If we would welcome Amelia to the stage. Our builder for today is Sherry Neese-Cowell. Sherry is in charge of sales and home designs for Neese Homes. She has been designing homes and working with customers for Neese Homes for the last 25 years. There we go. Mitch Crouch is going to be our lender here this morning. Mitch is currently the real estate sales manager for Ameritrust Credit Union. Mitch has nearly 40 years of mortgage lending industry experience. He was a principal in one of the largest mortgage banking companies in Wichita and has held many leadership positions in banks and mortgage lending companies. Mitch utilizes his diverse career background in various real estate roles in helping customers, members, and companies in structuring residential real estate transactions. Mitch has been a preferred lender for the national companies in relocating employees in many states. Mitch is a lifelong resident of Wichita, and he is married and has 2 grown children. Mitch is currently on the advisory board for the Center of Real Estate at Wichita State University. Thank you, Mitch. And our appraiser this morning is Fred Samuelson. Fred is a certified appraiser and has been a Realtor member for 47 years. Fred is the owner of the appraisal company. Fred has served as past president for RSCK, past president for SDK MLS, and past president of the Appraisal Institute Kansas chapter. Fred currently serves as the chairman of the Kansas Real Estate Appraisal Board. Welcome to the stage, Fred. And do we have a microphone? Oh, sorry.
Grab it for them. So there we go. We're good.
I'll just give this to you. All right, so we are going to ask what Fred said, do I have to answer every question? So the answer is if you have great input, go ahead and give it, or if you feel like, hey, you'd like to pass it on, you could do that as well. But the first question is, what were your first impressions from the Dr. Yoon and Dr. Longhofer presentations today?
I felt like he was pretty on target. I felt like both of them were, and very optimistic. I was expecting a little bit of a downer, but it was good. And I do feel like in the upper price points, and when I mean upper, anything probably above 400, that we're probably not having the appreciation that they've seen under 250. And I think that's just because of supply and demand, that we don't have the corporate relocation, and I don't feel like we have as many sellers turn buyers in our market this year, at least from my business.
I'm also very encouraged with what you have to say. I belong to a Builder 20 club group from National Home Builders Association, so twice a year I get to meet with builders across the country, which is very enlightening and kind of gives me a feel for what's going on in their markets. And they were all saying, 2019 they thought was kind of going to be a slowdown for them, but they're on East and West Coast and some in Texas. And so I'm very encouraged that we're seeing it pretty stabilizing. And the other encouraging thing is that maybe in our economy in our country today, maybe we'll be like Australia and we'll have a 15 to 20 year run without a drastic downturn. So that's very encouraging instead of looking and thinking, okay, is it going to happen next year? Is it going to happen next year? Maybe it doesn't happen for a while. So that's very encouraging.
I was also very encouraged about the news. I do think that even with the rising rate environment, which is really not going to be that much, I don't think, money is available for real estate. And with that, I think you're going to see a lot more maybe creative options with money than what we haven't seen here in the recent past.
I thought you were going to answer all the questions today, Mitch. We didn't pass this around. From the appraisal standpoint, I would agree with the presentations that we've had this morning. Throughout the years, it's been interesting to watch nationally as well as locally. I've always been appreciative that we live in the Midwest because our ship is pretty steady. If you go look at the East Coast, the West Coast, they go up and they go down, and they go up and they go down, but we plod along at our steady pace. I think overall we do much better at that rate. We don't lose money and we don't gain money, but we make money in the long haul. It's much easier to plan and to have a program whereby you can grow your economy. So I think we're doing good. We just need to keep on with our ship. We know how to run it.
All right. The next question, and some of you started to reference this a little bit, is the economists are seeing a slowdown in the coastal markets. Are you seeing trends in that direction in our South Central Kansas market?
I think the slowdown in the coastal markets is, well, they have to sell in the market and then turn around and buy in the same market. Now, that's tough when the prices are really high. Though the sellers in this market want to maximize their profits, and then they think they can steal one on the other end. Clear. I know everybody feels that. But I think it's the difference is, we're selling in a similar market, and it's not as hard as, the prices haven't gone up as much as you see on the coast.
Yeah, I agree with that also. I think from home design styles and trends, I think we've seen more of a shift in what people are asking for and what people are looking for in what they want in a new home or just a home per se. That I think that's had a dramatic impact on just different prices of homes. But in my market, I think it's more just location of where we have land available to build new homes right now. But I still have a very good list of people that are still wanting to build a new home right now in our market.
I look at home ownership in the Midwest as so much greater than it is on the coast in the first place. So when you talk about affordability of buying a house, people can afford to buy a house here. Whereas on the coast, obviously, interest rates are going to have a little more of an impact, as well as just trying to buy the house itself.
The interesting thing about our market, I think, is that we have kind of two segments. As was mentioned earlier, 300 and below, we have that activity. There seems to be a gap in the 400 range where not much is going on. Then when you get over 500, it's amazing how many as we call upper bracket homes are really being built and sold in this market. Actually, we have quite a bit of activity even in the $1 million range that I know you don't sell one every day, but when we go looking for comps, I do find them. Sometimes I go back a year or two or three, but it still projects the trend that's going on. One of the things that I've noticed this summer was more multiple contracts on houses. That presents a bit of a challenge to an appraiser as to how do you deal with that? Is that really the market? Is that really what that house is worth? Or was just something really cute about that house that brought a bunch of buyers in that wanted that particular property? So we have to look at also the listings, the days on the market. We don't have a long period of time, especially in those lower ranges, which is very good. And we get into the upper brackets, sometimes that extends a little bit. But with realtor help, people can price their houses properly and get them sold, and that's what this market's about.
Very good. In our current environment of rising interest rates, how do you see that impacting your area of the industry?
I don't think it's going to make a big difference. I think people buy a home because they want a home, and the interest rate deduction or the tax deduction is a secondary benefit.
I think as long as they stay with the gradual raise of what you're saying, maybe just 5, not go over 6%. It seems like people need a year or two to kind of get used to that, and they get used to it and they come back out and everybody wants a home. So I don't see it being just a huge impact once people get over the little bit of bump that it's gone up.
I actually think rising interest rates might actually help the market. I think a lot of people are going to think that, gosh, I don't want to lose this interest rate and the affordability of the house. So I actually think and I don't see the rates going up that much. I really don't. I know the feds are going to raise the discount rate, but when I look at mortgages, I really don't see, I see a lot of money in that area, and I don't see a major change over, I can't see over 5.5 at all going into next year.
As long as rates go at a slow pace, we'll be okay as been projected. I've actually been in the business long enough that I do remember 16% interest. And believe it or not, we bought and sold houses when it was even 16%. So it can be done, but that makes our job as realtors a little tougher. But we need to show people how they can get homes purchased even at those rates. So the low rates are good. People will adjust in what they buy. Maybe they'll buy just a teeny bit less than they would have. Maybe not finish a basement in a new construction, come back and do that later. There are ways and things that people can do to get themselves into homes, but it's our job to be sure that they understand all the possibilities that they have.
Very good, thank you. We have seen strong home price growth in the last couple of years. Do you feel that this will cause affordability problems for buyers?
You know, strong growth in home prices to me is a little bit of an exaggeration from what I've seen. I don't know what strong is by anybody's stretch of the imagination, but the sellers have the idea that they should get 3% a year, and that's where they are. I mean, they think, well, I bought it for this. I, repaired my garage door opener and I added some bushes. Therefore, I should get a lot of appreciation. So, what I deal with sellers a lot of times is what I call perceived appreciation, that they should have gotten 3% a year for every year, compound interest, and then every dollar for what they added in. So the prices of homes going up, you said strong appreciation. I don't know if that's real. And especially in the upper market, I think there's too much competition and they're not seeing that. So to answer the question, I don't think it's going to affect what people want to buy, but I think it's going to affect how the sellers still think they should get the money out of their house, dollar for dollar plus.
I think on the new home side, we have seen a bigger increase just in the material that we're putting into a home than we ever have. This last year, I think it's been about 6 to 7% increase in material, and a little bit of that is labor, but it's out of our control. It's very, we have seen a big increase in the new home. I'm hoping that slows down so that we can stabilize a little bit and everybody kind of gets used to these new increased prices that we're forced to charge for new homes.
Affordability, gosh, I don't think we have a market that obviously doesn't go up and down a lot. So I don't think there's going to be an affordability problem in the market at all. In fact, if anything, in lending, I think some of our guidelines have softened a little bit. And so that's making it where more people actually can get into a home.
In our market, we seem to have two different areas, new construction and existing. Some of you deal just with existing, some of you deal with just new construction. It's hard to make that crossover, but when I look at properties, I look at new construction in a totally different way than I do an existing property, and I approach them in a different manner. So it's important to understand the existing market as well as understand what's going on in the new construction market, especially considering cost. You can see I keep in touch with builders. I go even to open houses and pick up literature. On a weekend, what do I do on a weekend? I go look at houses because I want to keep up with the market. I want to know what's going on. The other thing is when I go into an existing property that it appears that the homeowner has made an addition or two, planted a new bush or whatever, as she mentioned, I always ask for the homeowner to give me a list of the things that you've done in this house since you made the purchase, and also give me a dollar amount. That way I can take the list that they give me, I can look at the list price, I can look at the sale price, and I can look at the history of the property. Some of the things on their list don't add value. We all know that. Some of the things that they do add value. So you need to make that judgment, and then you can go back and speak to your homeowners as to the price range as far as listing and selling based on what they've done with the things that really do contribute value to a property.
Thank you. All right. Speaking to market segments, are there different segments of the market where you are seeing dramatic differences?
I feel like anything under 250,000 is awesome, and Derby. So, if I go out on a listing appointment today for a house that's 225,000, and I go out on one tomorrow that's 800,000, I will fight you for the $225,000 listing because that's going to sell. I do feel like, and I don't know what the deal is with Derby. Somebody can tell me that, but man, that is hot. I feel like the cold area is between, say, 350 and 800, and I think that was our corporate buyer that is fairly non-existent right now. Over 800, I think, is interesting, and Fred hit on it a little bit. I think there's a pocket of Wichitans out there that are waiting for the perfect house to come up, even over $1 million. And sometimes you list a house that's $1 million, and you have 5 buyers go look at it the first week, and you think, where did they come from? I think they're just sitting there waiting. They don't have to sell to buy. They're likely not going to get a mortgage, but they're waiting for something like that. So I think when you see something over $1 million, sometimes that might sell quicker because it's a Wichitan as opposed to the $700,000 house. I also think that when an out-of-town buyer comes to Wichita, they are not in that upper end price range because they're coming from Atlanta or Chicago where they sold an $800,000 house. They can get something in Wichita for $400,000, so they don't spend that much. Plus, an out-of-town buyer is not committed to the town, and they may not say, I'm not going to have $1 million house in Wichita, or even an $800,000 house in Wichita that I can't sell. But I feel like it's an odd market, and to address Fred, find something else to do on the weekends, buddy. I feel like sometimes when we have these houses that we have appreciation and we have, 2 or 3 people bid on them, I always feel like they're not going to appraise. And sometimes I have the fear that the appraisals could keep our market from getting better because we always say the house is worth what a buyer will pay for it and what a seller will sell it for, but it's also worth what an appraiser will appraise it for. And a lot of the appraisers have a hard time looking at that, even though we had 3 offers that, gosh, could we get to that level? Did they just overpay? But that's how a market gets better. That's how we let it get better. So.
So coming at this question from the new home side of thing, I think our challenge as builders in this town is to constantly constantly looking for something fresh and new to bring to Wichita, which is going to give people a reason to buy. I find that exactly what you said, money in some clients is not the problem. There seems to be more wealth in America than ever, and I think that's true in Wichita also. So our challenge on the new home side of it is to bring that fresh new product to town that is going to cause people to want to sell their home and buy something new.
Well, we've seen just about every part of that market in the financing side, and I think we're finding a lot more what I would call educated buyers in the market too, especially on money, and and there's a lot more options out there. So I think that for us as a lender, we're not seeing as many big deals. And we are seeing a lot of small ones where the pre-approvals are done, but the people can't find a house. And so that's the part that I see that it concerns us is just the shortage.
I want to know if there's security in the house. I may need an escort out of here. Thanks, Amelia. One of the things, the challenges, I've been a licensed agent for 47 years and started in the business selling and then got into the appraising side of it. So it's been beneficial to me to be able to experience both levels of this business that we're in. But one of the things, as far as the appraisal side, the challenge comes from this. We're looking at a house today. The report that I'm filling out says put 3 or 4 or 5 sales. Where are those sales coming from? They are coming from 3 months ago, 6 months ago, or possibly even a year ago. And so we're dealing in a rising market, we're dealing with older sale prices that aren't there to support or push up where the market is going at this time. So we have to use good judgment in appraising property as well as listing it, because markets truly do need to rise or we might as well quit. We're at where we're going to be. Excuse me. So markets do need to move, and we as appraisers need to understand. That's why I do go out on weekends, so I can get a feel for what's going on. The other thing is, I think in Wichita in our price ranges, if you look, I remember when our first sale over $1 million occurred. There was a point in time where there was not a sale over $1 million in Wichita. When it happened, we were all just thrilled. We got this now. We got this one comp, and it'll cover everything we're going to do for the next year. It only takes 1 or 2 good sales, to hold up a market for a long period of time. The other thing is, in the upper brackets, we have 2nd and 3rd generation money in town now. You'll see a lot of our business people, and as in Sherry's case, 3rd generation, they're running her company now. And so we see that our markets have risen. We even have some $4 million properties in Wichita. So our overall range has gone up. I think the most exciting thing about our market is that everything under 200 is selling. That's optimism, in my opinion. When that market is active, then we have a good market.
Thank you. Fred, I'd just like you to know, if you're bored on weekends, there are several real estate auction companies that do a lot of real estate auctions there during the weekend. So we'll send you some brochures and get you some addresses. You don't just have to hit open houses, okay? Okay. All right, shifting gears to new home development and availability of new homes.
We have a brand new neighborhood we've moved to up in Brookfield that's very beautiful. But if you have a buyer that wants to build a new home in Wichita, it is, in Northeast Wichita, it's limited. So it's hard to explain this city. I can't quite figure it out. It seems like there's West Wichita and there's East Wichita. And it's just hard to get people to cross that barrier because there's definitely some beautiful new neighborhoods in West Wichita, but the East Side buyer just has a very hard time moving. So our biggest challenge right now is finding the land or getting people to let loose of their land so that we can create some brand new neighborhoods in Northeast Wichita. So that's our biggest challenge.
I'm good.
If you watch the Wichita market over time, you can see how various segments kind of light up and then they go away and another segment lights up and goes away. Our existing properties were very active for a long time, but there's a lot of competition to existing properties now. You look at the patio home market, I haven't looked at the stats, but my guess is that the patio home market is the most active or close to it of anything else that's going on in the city. And not only in one area, but you can start in Derby and make a circle all the way around the city, and you can see the patio home market going very well. The other thing is, have you ever noticed that they're building duplexes these days? Thousands and thousands of duplexes are going up. All of these multifamily properties, in my opinion, create competition to sales of existing properties. Most of our rents that we look at these days are $1,000 to $1,500 range. That's a pretty good payment on a house if you want to buy. But again, the down may not be there, or our market's a little more fluid. And so people are moving, they're less committed in buying a house at this point in time. If they don't want to stay the typical 7 or 8 years, they can go in and live in a pretty nice piece of property for $1,000 or $1,500 a month and not have to put that cash down at the beginning or the upfront of the deal. So you watch our markets. We had condos years ago that were active, not so much anymore. Various parts of our economy drive different parts of our markets. And I think as agents and realtors, we need to be able to recognize those and adjust. Again, as Sherry mentioned, on the east side of the city, you'll notice that there are more little niche neighborhoods that builders are finding to build in for various reasons. There just isn't land available. Either they're asking too much for the raw ground or other things that occur that don't allow cities to expand. So that's part of the reason the west side is moving quite well right now. So you have to look at the overall market. And one of the things that we have to deal with when we write reports, of course, is underwriters. And underwriters, a lot of them are out of the state and even on the coast, and we try and explain to them what our markets are like, and it gets to be a real challenge to do that. So our market's moving. As long as we have activity, I think it's healthy for Wichita.
Okay. We have one last question that's been prepared. So again, if you have a question, do we have time still? Okay, so if you have a question and you want to bring it forward to Sheila or Tom, we'd be glad, or Todd, excuse me, we would be glad to get that up here. Sorry, Todd. All right. Last question is, are there any other factors that you feel are important to our local market? The factors don't necessarily need to be from the presentations or anything you've heard this morning, just anything else that you're seeing out there right now.
I want to say something to Fred and about Fred, so no need for security. Fred calls me probably twice a month and asks me questions about houses I've sold, and it's not necessarily a house he's appraising for me, but I get those from probably 4 or 5 appraisers. And when appraisers call you, take their call, answer their questions. They haven't seen these houses. They look at these houses in black and white. We've been in the houses. We smelled the cat urine. We didn't just look at square footage. So that's really important. But Fred is one of the most diligent appraisers in doing those kind of things. And like I said, touches base with me quite a bit, and possibly lots of people in this room. So one thing I'd like to say is, with this year, for some reason, my sales are usually 50-50, meaning 50% buyers and 50% sellers. This year, I've been 70% sellers and 30% buyers. And I can tell a huge difference in the lack of buyers out there. I'm not getting as many calls on listings, and I'm not getting showings. I'm having some listings that are just graveyard dead as far as people going through them. And the sellers are like, you got to get people in, you got to get people in. And that's tough to deal with right now. You can just do so many open houses. But it's been pretty tough in that. I'd say that $300,000 to $700,000 range are just not many people out there. And also to talk about my other panelists here, Mitch, I've worked with Mitch for 100 years or something. Mitch is a magician. You can give him somebody with a 500 credit score, no cash, and a bankruptcy, and he'll get him a $400,000 mortgage. Yes. And Sherry, if you've ever sat down with Sherry Cowgill, who's Clifford Niece's daughter, if you didn't know that, she sits down like no other builder in town, and you'll have a screen up, and they'll say, well, I want the master bedroom a foot bigger, and she automatically makes that happen right in front of the buyer. And you do bring in things from places I've never seen. When I go in your models, I get house envy. I have to feel like I need to go home and remodel, but you do a really good job with that. You picked well.
So I guess from the new home side of it, I was just telling one of our employees the other day that every time we get to choose to build a new house in Wichita, it's a blank slate, and we get to try to come up with and create something fresh and new. So I had one buyer that I'm building for right now, and she had a friend in from another city, a fairly big city, and she took her through some of our model homes that we have here, and she said, wow, you have cooler stuff here than we have where I'm from. So my goal is, in the Wichita market, is to just bring beautiful, creative, fresh, new things to Wichita so that we can give even the local people, if we're not getting a lot of people moving in, we give the local people a reason that they gotta have it. So that's our goal.
Well, in lending, I think there's some major changes that are actually coming on, and the biggest thing that I can tell you in the lending area is FICO scores. And so within the last 6 months, FICO scores changed because the repositories weren't reporting or are not reporting some of the collections that were there before. It's even more important on a title binder as we look at it with a buyer going forward. But just recently, FICO is going to be changing, and there's going to be coming out with an ultra FICO. And the ultra FICO basically is where a borrower might be supplying bank statements, so we'll know how they manage their money as well as their credit. And that's going to be a big factor because right now, the average score, believe it or not, is over 700. And that's going to rise even more so. So more and more people, and as a lender, it's the first thing we do is we pull a credit report, what's their FICO? So I think we're going to have a loosening of FICO scores, and it's going to make more people have an opportunity to buy a house.
Thank you, Amelia, for your comments. By the way, it's important that we have a relationship in this business. We're in this thing together. Y'all didn't notice. It starts with contract, but then a lot of us are needed to complete the cycle. And the important thing is that we all share as much information. If I asked for a show of hands this morning, how many of you would think you're not allowed to talk to an appraiser? I bet a lot of you still think that. That's not the case. If you look at the Fannie Freddie Q&As, it says in about number 56 or something that an appraiser should talk to a real estate agent because they might have some information about that property. Well, duh. Who else would? So I make it my business that if I am doing a property and the value is not coming in, I'll call the real estate agent and say, what did you use to list this property? What comps did you use? Assuming that they did, of course. It's amazing how much silence I get on the other end of the line. It's what the seller told me to price it at, right? Or it's what they need to get in the next one. So I suggest and recommend in this day and age that you help the appraiser do the job that we need to do for both the buyer and the seller. If the property's worth it, you are allowed to share information with an appraiser. If there are comparables that you think the appraiser should know about that property or information, give it to them up front before that report gets out the door. Once I hit that button on the computer and it's gone, it's like, World War III to get it back and make a change. So give the appraiser all of the information that you think will be helpful in that situation, improvements to the property, all kinds of things that could be beneficial, comps that are sold down the street. Yes, we can use FSBOs if we have good information. So give that to the appraiser up front. Then the appraiser can make a good judgment based on all of that data. I also want to mention to you, we have, as you well know, a competitor out there in the web, and it's called Zillow. And if you want to know, Zillow ain't no good. And why are they not good? Because we are a non-disclosure state, and Zillow cannot get sale prices from our county records. So if you look at the bottom down there on Zillow, it says suggested sale price. Well, it's either an actual sale price or it's no one. We don't suggest it. So that tells you the validity of that kind of information. So help your buyers and your sellers when they read stuff like that out on the web, that they understand we have good information. And where do you get it? You get it from a local real estate agent.
Thank you. The next question is for Amelia. It says, what advice do you give the homeowner whose home is going to be going on the market at over $1 million? Besides to call you.
I would probably tell them that there's a group of people, like I said before, that I think are out there that would look. And that group is going to go, let's say there's 5 people. And that's a lot. And they look at your house. If that group does not buy it, then you're probably going to be on the market for at least 18 months. Because you've got to wait for another buyer to come into the market, or you reduce the price where you can bring in another buyer, or one of those 5 changes their mind and decides to come back. But I would tell them that you have a very small margin of buyers, and your house needs to be really perfect. And because, you know, when you get to the point of $1 million, it's not about qualifying. If they can buy $1 million, they can buy $1.5 million. If they can buy $1.5 million, they can buy $4 million. It doesn't matter. They want what they want. And if you don't have it, they're going to wait for it, or they're going to call Sherry. So.
Very good. All right. Next question is, what are your thoughts, and this is for everybody, on tiny homes?
You know, I kind of wonder who's done this research that says that'll work here. I mean, and where they've chosen to put them. If they're there for a lock and go, where you live half the time here in your tiny home, and then you go to Arizona, who is that buyer? These tiny homes have upstairs bedrooms. I don't know who that is. So I think they're darling. I mean, they're so cute. They're the things that you see like at IKEA when you go to IKEA, the little things like that. So cute. But I just can't see if they're targeting the older person, it's too small. They don't want to give up all their stuff, and they don't want to go upstairs to a bedroom. I don't think they're going to fly here, but I don't want to be the one to not do it. But where they picked that location out there near Krista McAuliffe, that's too far out. You need to be downtown if you're going to do that, I think. But somebody did some really good research, not me.
I don't know. I wish I could hit that price point, but I can't. I don't know. Just with lumber costs, and you've got a driveway, and you've got a kitchen, and you've got a bathroom, it costs the same amount to put that in any price range house. So I think I applaud them if they can hit those price ranges that they're trying to hit.
I guess I just don't see a big market, but I do think the perception out there is that, oh, this can be more affordable. I think is the key. I don't think it's any more than that. Good luck on appraising that, Fred.
My years have taught me a little bit of wisdom, Mitch. I do. This actually, I think, is a new market for Sherry. Most of the tiny homes I've seen have been on wheels, so maybe you can put some wheels under what you're building, and there you go.
Yeah. Fred, you're going to hang on to the mic because the next question is for you. What are the type of improvements that homeowners make that are the biggest contributors to enhanced value?
Probably the major things: basement finish, fencing, things of that nature. Decor, again, making a house look sparkle, make it look real nice. One of the things that I mention to people or talk to them when I get a job that people are remodeling it or whatever, and that is to make sure that the things you're putting in the house, two things. One is that the improvements that you put in the house are similar to what you find in your neighborhood. Don't be putting gold faucets in a $100,000 house. You just don't expect that. The other thing is that as you approach the upper end of the value range of your neighborhood, your rate of return diminishes quickly. So again, if you finish a basement, don't put $500, $300 yard carpet down there when you got $10 yard carpet upstairs. Make it relative so that not one feature sticks out more than another, and then be very conscious about the value range. I've had a lot of homes this summer where people have given me, maybe they paid $300 and they've given me a budget of, they're going to spend $100 or $125. Well, can you take a $300,000 house to a $425 house in 3 months just with improvements? Sometimes the neighborhood might allow that if you start low enough, but typically you're going to come in a little bit short. So you need to really get a house appraised before you're going to spend money on all those improvements. So you at least understand and know that if you want to go finance after you've done all of that, you may not get the appraisal you're looking for to make that project successful.
Very good. Well, I don't see that we have any other questions. So ladies and gentlemen, would you please give our panelists a round of applause? Thank you so much to each and every one of you. You are free to go back to your tables.
Thank you, Megan. And thank you, Amelia, Mitch, Sherry, and Fred. It was a great discussion. I hope you found as much value in this program this morning as I have. And a reminder, there's additional forecast books at our SCK office for you to pick up. I want to thank those that drove in from Kansas City, Lawrence, Topeka, Hutchinson, Emporia, and other locations throughout Kansas. We had a fantastic turnout this morning. Those that have RPAC Major Investor Luncheon reservations with Dr. Lawrence Yoon, that'll start at 11 o'clock in this room. And I want to thank again Dr. Lawrence Yoon and Dr. Stan Longhopper for their presentations. And very importantly, this wouldn't have happened without the staff coming together and putting it together. So a round of applause for our staff at RSCK. That concludes our program, and thank you for joining us this morning.